Honda wanted to capture everything great about summer in one word: Summerbration, as in the Honda Summerbration sales event. Now throw in some meat and fire, and you have a Barbabration. Hurry in and get a 2017 HRV for 0.9% APR from KBB.com's best value brand at your Honda dealer.
Visit your Metro Milwaukee Honda dealer today during the Honda Summerbration sales event.
Based on 2017 Brand Image Awards from Kelley Blue Book, visit KBB.com for information. APR financing offers available for well-qualified buyers. See dealer for financing details.
Blog Talk Radio.
Well, I bet y'all are surprised that I'm on the radio at Saturday night or Saturday afternoon or Saturday in general, right? Well, know this. The guest has to be pretty darn special for me to come on a Saturday, or I'm stupid and I don't know how to read my own emails. It's probably both, actually, but I will admit, yes, I'm stupid. I do not know how to read. I myself actually rescheduled this interview, forgot I rescheduled it, one on the original time, hence here we both are, both David and myself, which I'll have him on very shortly. I just want to do a couple of really, really super quick announcements just to those of us that might be in the listening area that are local, meaning Milwaukee or Chicago. A couple quick things. In case you guys are out and about tonight, I always want to try to promote local music. So 3 different things. Tonight at 9 o'clock, Killer Clowns Live, which is Scott McHugh's band, is playing at Lucky Chance. That's at 9 o'clock tonight. Those in Chicago, 9 o'clock tonight. Michael Reiser, my dear friend of the Michael Reiser Band, is giving a free show, actually, and that's at the D Hangout Bar and Grill. That's at 9 o'clock tonight. That's close to the Illinois border, if I'm not mistaken. You can look that up. Also, Cross-Eyed Carter at the Landing on Layton, actually. The Landing on Layton, right off of the freeway there, as a matter of fact. Please make it a point to go ahead and check that out. And if you guys happen to be out and about tomorrow, there's an open jam at Dugout 54, which is on 53rd and 54th in Blue Mound. That's the SIN, the Sunday Open Jam. So thanks so much for listening. Without further ado, I'm not going to make David wait. We'll get him on the line. We'll start chatting with him. David.
Hey, how are you?
You're here. Oh, we're both here at the same time. Oh, yay. Oh, my gosh. I'm so. First of all, I was just telling the listening audience, oh, my God, I'm having wine. And why? Because I'm nervous. I originally said it was because it's a Saturday and I'm doing an interview, but I'm bullshitting. I'm very nervous. You're a big deal. OMG. Big deal. Big deal on the show.
Sweet. You should not be nervous at all.
No, dude, I really should. Wait till we get into talking. You'll see what I'm talking about. I'm like flipping out that you've done so many things. I've creeped on you. I've talked to other people. I know lots of stuff about you. So before we start, I just want to clarify. I was going to say my guest today is David Rowdin, but I want to make sure I don't screw that up. So is it Rowdin or Rowdin?
Actually,
how do I say that?
It's Rodwin, so Rodwin.
Okay, Rodwin. That's what I thought. You know why? Because stupid me has it written Rowdin on the top of the page because I'm such a good journalist. Way to go. So let's see. I've said his name wrong. See what else. More wine, please. Okay. No, I promise it'll be a really good show. Okay, so you've not been on the show before, so let me give you a little bit about the format. And to those that are listening in, because normally I don't do Saturday shows, so we'll have a much bigger audience instead of archive. Most of the time I get people who listen in afterwards, so hopefully today we'll have a much bigger live audience. I tend to jump around a lot. I'm not your typical Katie Couric chick where it's like, tell me where you came from, tell me about your education. Boring, boring, boring. I love Katie Couric, but that's boring, and I'm not boring, so we're not going to do that. So we're going to go right out of the gate. What up with Fuck Tinder? I've never seen somebody say, I'm going to do a project called Fuck Tinder. And this is typical for David, but let's start with Fuck Tinder.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. That's cool.
Yeah, so I am finishing a book right now called Fuck Tinder. The funny thing is originally it was going to be a feature film. And the subject is dating using online apps in San Francisco for the last 2 years. And what happened was I had more stories than I could fit into a feature film. So a friend of mine suggested, why don't you just start writing them all down, and this could be a book. So I started writing the book, and I decided to put a cutoff point. So it begins exactly on New Year's Eve going into 2015, and I finish with a bang in the biggest of ways going into this year.
Oh my gosh,
that is Fuck Tinder, the book, and as I've been telling people about it, they're already like, well, this is also obviously a TV series, so I have to start talking to some people about doing that, but first I have to finish writing the book, and there are just so many crazy stories of dating in San Francisco. It is like no other place that I've lived.
and including David, of course, because I've read your wall before, and I've seen you actually talk about, hey, I went out on a date with this person, and this happened, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, first of all, to those of you that are listening haven't seen David before or aren't Facebook friends with him, he's not a bad-looking fella, so I'm going to tell you that right now. So I've always been curious, and I want you to explain this to me, because you're not ugly, and you know what? I love ugly people, because I don't think I'm the hottest thing next to Brett, but you're smart, you're funny, you lobby for a good cause, you got your shit together, and I'm thinking, who's going to do this to this guy on a date? I read this one thing you had said you were out with a girl, and I'm thinking, who does that to this guy? I'm like, I felt bad. So let's talk about this a little bit, because I, of course, have had my own little, I mean, I've dated people where it's like, oh, my gosh. Yeah. So do you honestly think now in the 20th century, because we have things like Tinder and Match.com and all that stuff, I hear scary stories all the time. Do you think that our social media dating stuff has really kind of made life worse for the single people out there?
That's a really interesting question, and in some ways, my initial answer is yes. And it's specifically the apps bring things to a new level. You know, I was dating regularly online on websites years ago, and then I was in a serious relationship. I was living with someone, and the relationship ended, and I moved up to San Francisco, and I had never been on an app. I hadn't been on Bumble or Tinder or even the ones like OkCupid that also have a website. Something about having it in your pocket, and like any other game on your phone, we begin to forget that these are almost real people. And because of that, I think people behave worse in certain ways. But that's only the before you even get to meet them in person. And I should say, you know, I am to blame for. I don't say that I am above all this myself. Well, one of the things that I think I am most guilty of is matching with someone and then not sending a message. And sometimes that happens just because I am so busy, and sometimes because I've matched with a bunch of people. I know that if I begin sending them a message, I'm not going to have time to even meet with them for weeks at a time. But, you know, they don't know exactly what's going on, and this happens to me in reverse as well. So that is just one of the most initial aspects of attempting to meet with someone. And in San Francisco, I have found it is harder to actually sit down with another person than in any other city that I've lived.
Oh, my God. Well, you just brought a really good factor up. Those of us that are in entertainment are busy all the time, so it's really, really hard to try to find a person. Well, and you live in San Francisco, so I got to ask this. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I'm a New York girl. I love my New York City, so when you drag me to L.A., those people scare me. And I'm trying to be real. I have people I love there, but I'm like, that city scares me. I can't get around. Everybody is so – I mean, I was with an actress, and it took her 2 hours to get ready. And I'm like, seriously? 2 hours? To be on a red carpet for 4 minutes, kids. 4, okay? So I'm thinking, you know, that's got to – I mean, what's it like in your area? I mean, not only the dating situation per se, but obviously I'm going to guess it's an extension of California, and I'm going to assume it means it's rich in culture, rich in arts, rich in theater, so it kind of makes your job easier. Am I getting that right? Yeah?
In some ways that's true, but San Francisco is such a tech-saturated culture that I actually, in a good way, I stand out here. In a bad way, I also stand out here in that I am not, you know, a multi-gajillionaire who works for Uber or Google. I am still pretty much a poor artist, which has its own sort of attractions. Like, oh, I didn't realize there were any poor artists left in San Francisco. But the waters in which people swim in this town are so different. And I'll give you a really specific example, and this is one thing that's in the book. And that is people put into their profiles on online dating sites what they aren't interested in. And I'm actually going to quote to you from a woman who I dated for a little bit about a year and a half ago. And I had saved her profile because it was so interesting. And one of the things she writes is, physicality and sex are really important, but I am not, with bold on not, into poly, open relationships, sex cult / club members, one taste, BDSM, serious kink, swingers, or any of that business.
Oh, my God.
And what's interesting is that in San Francisco, people feel like they need to make that declaration before they've actually started talking to you. They need to actually include that in the profile because it is so ubiquitous here. And one of the things I've actually had the hardest time doing in San Francisco is finding women who are interested in monogamous relationships, much less leading to marriage and children.
Wow.
So it's made it a very interesting place to date. But I'm at a place right now, I'm 46 years old. I actually do want to find a partner to be monogamous with and eventually get married to and have children and a family. And that is not what a lot of people are up to here.
I get it.
It's an odd dating pool. Yeah.
Oh. No, I totally understand.
I have lived in I have lived in Chicago. Actually, I went to grad school at Northwestern. So I love Chicago, and it's an interesting and totally different kind of city from San Francisco.
Now, whenever I go to Chicago, I always think New York. I always feel like they're kissing cousins, so to speak, meaning that obviously in my mind, nothing beats New York, of course, but when I'm in Chicago, it's kind of a mini New York, you know what I mean? Plus, I think sometimes people are kind of tough there, too. I'm like, I don't know if I could date somebody from Chicago because they're kind of like New Yorkers, where sometimes I'll walk past them, and they're like, I don't even know who the hell they are. I mean, they'll walk down, walk, and they don't look at you, or they'll walk, they're looking another way or whatever have you, all this jazz, and I'm like, I don't want to deal with that. So I just find it so interesting. Well, second of all, I kind of fibbed because obviously I was going to get around to the obvious question because everybody always watches my show page, my personal page. They see that you're coming on or anyone's coming on and they think they're attractive and or single. They make me ask these questions. So I had to throw it out there. See, so anyone listening right now, we all know that David's looking for a partner who wants to have children, who wants to settle down. Who could ask for anything more? Seriously, ladies. I mean, I'm not going to lie about that one. See, I just hooked you up, and we're 5 minutes into the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
And in San Francisco, they are looking for not just more, but different. And that's part of what's led to some of the most fascinating stories here.
I bet.
And part of that is just, Go ahead.
Well, No. What I was just sitting and thinking to myself is oftentimes, and this leads to the question, because obviously you've done a number of different venues doing storytelling and writing and things of that nature. So what I often find I like to ask artists about is, do you find that primarily a good portion of the best material you ever find is in personal life experience, whether it's disappointing or whether it's, the top shelf, whatever have you? I think just everyday living, you could literally pick out 5 or 6 things where you could write about, make a movie about. I've been on the subway and thinking I should do a movie right now. Why? Because I'm on the subway and people are freaks. I mean that in a loving way, but no, seriously, you know what I'm talking about. Like, get on a trolley sometime, and you're like, yeah, I like that person over there. Woo! But you know what I mean. I think it's all about setting. It's all about environment. It's all about some of the best tales can come from one minute memory or moment. I guess that's my feeling. I don't know if you're kind of the same thing, but I know.
Yeah, I totally agree. When I've had a few different phases to my career, both in terms of the mediums that I work in and the styles in which I work in. And one of my greatest mentors over my life was a guy named Spalding Gray. And Spalding was the person who basically pioneered autobiographical monologues or storytelling, the stuff that we think of today as being ubiquitous at every fringe festival where someone gets up and just talks about their life. And he started doing it in the 1970s when no one else was narcissistic enough to just walk into a theater and start telling people about their day. And that's what he did as an experiment. So he was my mentor for many years, and that was really influential. But to be honest, when I first started out, I didn't have the confidence, and I probably didn't have the life experience in some ways to have stories that were interesting enough to tell. So the first half of my career, I was writing only fiction. I was writing things that may have been inspired by or influenced by moments in my life, but they were always substantially fictionalized. And it was only after I really got to work with him for a long chunk of time, shortly after 9/11, we spent a month living together at this artist colony in the swamps of Florida outside of New Smyrna Beach called the Atlantic Center for the Arts. And we lived together for a month, and he helped me on a new piece. And I was trying to figure out what he could truly help me on, something that would be really hard for me to tackle. And honestly, it was about the suicide of a friend of mine. And Spalding had dealt with depression and his extraordinary neuroticism. But he was really incredible in helping guide me through working on this piece because I was looking in some strange way for the dark humor because people can hear things so much better when there is some amount of humor involved. And it was a truly transformative time. And basically since then, all of my work has been rooted in either my own life being totally autobiographical or instead doing biographical work about some of my heroes. So I wrote one screenplay about Leonard Bernstein, who I actually studied with when I was 18 years old. I got to study conducting with him at Tanglewood, the summer home of the Boston Symphony, which was an incredible experience. And I was in some ways way too young to fully appreciate it. But when you're in the when you're in the presence of people who are so extraordinary like that, who fill up the room in ways that it's almost hard to describe, it's made it so that I've wanted to tell a story about Bernstein for the longest time. And I'm in the long, slow process of getting that film made. But many of the smaller works or more both filmable as well as storytelling kind of pieces that I can just get on a stage and tell, they're all autobiographical stuff. So Fuck Tinder is completely autobiographical. I don't go into anyone else's crazy stories as to what's happened to them in their dating life. I have more than enough of my own to fill an entire book. However, it has been proposed to me every time I start telling people about Fuck Tinder and I go into a specific story, they're like, oh my God, that reminds me of this thing that happened to me. So I might try and start up a parallel website once Fuck Tinder goes live where people get to share their own stories. You know, a little bit like, I don't know if you've ever seen that website Post Secret, where people tell very brief secrets from their lives on the backs of postcards. And it's really creative and really beautiful, and it started this wonderful community. I think a similar thing could work for Fuck Tinder. So that is in the works. But again, first I need to find the time to bang out the rest of the book.
Right. No, I totally understand what you're saying, definitely. Now, I want to switch gears a little bit because I want to talk about this. This is another fun fact that I found out. Apparently, your brother Scott has a product on HSN, The Loop, I saw. So I was like, you know what? On my show, we get to promote whatever I want. So if you don't mind taking 4 minutes to talk about your brother's product, I think we should talk about The Loop.
That is hysterical, and I would love to. I have one actually sitting on my desk right in front of me because I actually use this thing every day. And the Loop, it's the most basic thing. It's the simplest thing. It's you know, your headphones, your earpods, you know, get all tangled up every time you take them out of your pocket.
Right.
This is something that you wrap them around and they will never get tangled again. It is that simple. It's a piece of plastic, but it is like the proportions are perfect. It is basically indestructible. You can slide it into your pocket. It takes literally 5 seconds to take on and off. And it makes it so you don't end up like yelling and screaming at your stupid headphones and spending 5 minutes untangling them every time you take them out of their pocket. It is. And the funny thing is, he is an architect who designs these beautiful buildings, these stunning houses, and he has a designer's mind. So anytime he encounters any kind of problem in the real world, he's like, what can I invent to fix this problem? And he finally did that with The Loop. So it's a really fantastic and simple thing. And it's really funny. My mother is on a trip right now. She's flying to Asia, and she took a really quick moment to take a picture in one of the airports. Apparently, it has gotten enough play that you can actually get The Loop in airports now. So if you're traveling through an airport and you're like, oh, my damn earbuds are getting tangled up again, go by, you know, one of the stores that has all the different kinds of knickknacks and stuff, and you will hopefully find a Loop right there.
That is so cool. Oh, my God, that's neat. That's awesome. Well, congratulations, Scott. You're not on the show, but congratulations. And that's a big deal getting on the HSN thing. That is awesome. I've tried to get on HSN a long time ago with something, and I was like, of course, I got turned down. I'm like, you must have to have some serious street cred to get on HSN. But that's exciting, and that's awesome, you know, for somebody to come up with something like that. That's got to be really thrilling. You know what I mean?
Oh, definitely. You know, I've helped him hawk it at the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas for a few years, and he's really spent a lot of time trying to get it out there. And in some ways, the biggest reason why he's trying to get it out there because he just wants to take away the pain that he has felt in untangling his earbuds and share that with other people.
That's too
I'm totally
cool.
serious
about
that.
But that's
Sure.
awesome, Neil. And I thought to myself, you know what, let's talk about this because that kind of lends to the fact that you have like a creative family, which is absolutely awesome, I have to say. So, now having said that.
I do.
Well, do you have other brothers and sisters, by the way? Because I just saw the notation about Scott, and forgive me, but I couldn't remember if you had more siblings or not.
No. Scott is the
two.
only one. He's an artist, an architect, and a sculptor, and he does these incredible sculptures. And actually, you can find his architecture at RowdinArchitecture.com, and the Loop.
Okay.
I think the website is theloopsolutions.com is the easiest way to get to the Loop.
Cool. Thank you for that commentary.
Yeah.
So now we have that information
Sure.
too. See, look at the things you're learning, folks. 15 minutes in and we're already learning some awesome things. So this is awesome. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit and talk about one of the things that you used to do in your prior life before all the wonderful things that you've been doing now is you obviously you started talking about you've been to both Princeton and Northwestern, which are obviously very high-level accredited institutions. So one of the things I always like to ask my guests when they come on the show is this. There are some that come on that literally haven't had a lick of college, went on and did 5,000 wonderful things. So what I want to ask you is, because a lot of the folks listening in might be starting out considering, okay, I want to be a director, I want to be a writer, I want to do this or this. So because you have such vastly rich experience in these accredited places, let me just ask you this. Do you think that has been a huge fundamental foundation for you into getting where you are now? Or would you have said, you know what, maybe I would have just maybe lightened up a bit on education, not folks that were saying you shouldn't get educated, but just give me your background and tell me a bit how that's affected you from a professional standpoint.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And it's funny because, I spent 4 years at Princeton, and I ran through my master's as quickly as possible. So I did it in just over a year. So while I did not spend nearly as much time at Northwestern, I have found the Northwestern network to be really incredible, especially in arts and entertainment. Princeton's network is not nearly as developed or wide or deep, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's been a surprisingly wonderful thing that Northwestern has been so rich. I'm actually telling a story in Los Angeles on March 29th at the Matrix Theater through the Northwestern University Entertainment Alumni Association, and it's going to be a great evening of a bunch of different storytellers, and they do things like that. Princeton just doesn't. But when you go back to other questions of like, what did I learn at these places and how did that help with my development? At Princeton, I majored in politics. At Northwestern, I got a master's in music composition, and I was interested very much so in all of the arts when I was younger, but I made a very specific and strong choice when I was an undergrad to have as wide and general a liberal arts education as possible. I'd gotten into Oberlin. I was strongly considering going to Oberlin, and I think I would have actually found it more enjoyable. It would have been in some ways more in my sweet spot. But I found Princeton more challenging, and I actually enjoyed that. So I was a politics major, and my focus was both on Middle Eastern politics and African politics and a little bit Latin American politics. And I feel like having that greater awareness of the world is really important for artists. I knew people who went straight to conservatory and exited conservatory extraordinary at whatever it is they were studying. They had a level of craft that was remarkable, but they weren't necessarily fully developed human beings who had an understanding of what was happening in the world. And there's nothing wrong with that per se, but that wasn't the kind of artist I wanted to be. I wanted to be an artist who had a real holistic understanding of the world in all of its aspects. I was taking classes in psychology and anthropology and sociology and English and music. And I feel like that has actually served me in my career in a very broad and general kind of way. And my thought was that, later on, if I want to, I can learn the craft either in the real world or by going back to school. And that's exactly what I did.
Gotcha. Okay. I understand. Because it's nice to touch on that. Because like I said, some people have come on here and they've been, let's say, for instance, they literally taught themselves how to play music, or some individuals only took a couple acting classes, things like that. And there are some people that do hugely successful by just kind of saying, you know what, I kind of shelf the education, and there are some who just literally have carved out an even better life for themselves in terms of going to school.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for that. Now,
sure.
I want you to explain this. I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish.
Well, I was just going to say that in some ways, even though I have all of this education, when it comes to the arts, most of it was as an autodidact. I actually taught myself how to play piano. I had the most amazing middle school teacher in public school who was this inspiration. He was a writer, director, the singer, piano player, and I just wanted to be like him. And at the time, I wasn't taking lessons. I found some sheet music. I figured out how to begin to teach myself how to play the piano. And that's how I got into the music world. Also in terms of the theatrical work, I've almost never, I took one acting class in college. That's the entirety of traditional acting class experience I had. Later on, when people began to see my work, and when someone in particular saw my first one-man opera called Virtual Motion, they were like, wow, that's amazing. When did you study with the director Anne Bogart? And I said, I have no idea who that is. But it made me interested enough to actually seek her out. And then I did spend about 2 years training with the City Company based in New York. And they do an incredible work that is, strangely, the training they do, even though they're a theater company, they don't teach acting. They teach a kind of physical and mental discipline to be the perfect vessel for whatever kind of performance you're doing. But they never do scene breakdown. They never discuss the dialogue or character work, anything like that. And I found that strangely appealing, and I think that's actually influenced my work since then.
Wow, look at that. Thank you for adding that, by the way. That's awesome. And and the other thing that I'm curious to ask you about, obviously, because you brought the theater thing up, which is on my list here, so we should go right to there. The two theater productions that came to mind for me that stood out were the Virtual Motion, which you talked about, and Trippin'. It's described as a one-man hyper opera, which I thought was so funny, because I'm like, I've never heard the term hyper opera. So explain to the folks, and me, because I'm not an idiot, but what the hell's a hyper opera? Because I can't even get to the real opera, let alone a hyper opera.
Sure, that's an excellent question. So I came up with the title 20 years ago when I first started writing the piece. And I wanted to make clear that this wasn't a normal opera. This was not an opera that was ever going to be done in an opera house. My voice is amplified. All of the instruments are either sampled or electronic. The score is completely recorded. But more than that, the hyper actually refers to part of the physical staging of it. And I took a technique that was first developed by John Moran, a composer-performer who sadly has kind of fallen off the face of the earth the past many years. But he was huge in New York City in the avant-garde scene in the 90s. And he did some work where an actor would be on stage, let's say, and every time they took a step, even if they were completely barefoot, you would hear like a cartoon Foley, the sound effect of someone stepping with a big heavy shoe onto the ground, even though you're looking at someone with bare feet. In addition, he would take all other kinds of sound effects and he would layer them into his musical score, basically creating a Foley for every movement that anyone had on stage. Now, what I did was I took his technique and I added into it cartoon sound effects. So he basically just did like real life, the idea of someone getting into a car, you hear the sound of a door, and even if there's no car on stage, you see someone miming in midair this sound. And what it does is it creates this surreal world. And the world, you begin to visualize things that just aren't there. So it's this sort of way of making your mind create the entire scene based on the sound effects that are layered in perfectly with the entire musical score. So that, for lack of a better term, is where hyperopera comes from. It was also a very cool term back 20 years ago, you know, hyper this and hyper that. So I was just sort of playing around with it to see if I could let people know that this is in some ways an opera and in other ways completely different.
Did you hear that? He said that, folks, like 20 years ago was popular. Hello, it's popular today, because guess what? I never hear that term, so I'm totally going to hashtag it. Hyper opera. Everything's going to become hyper opera now, just because it's the cool thing to say.
Awesome.
That's cool, man, though. That's awesome. No, I thought it was really neat and different and out of the norm, and I like it. That's why I had to ask.
And one of the great things, yeah, sure. One of the great things about it, actually, it's something that's come up to quite recently, is the company that premiered the piece. I was one of the early members of a company in Los Angeles called Sacred Fools Theater, and they approached me just a few months ago and asked me if I would consider reviving it for its 20th anniversary. So we're talking about it right now to see if we can figure out dates in their next season between 2017 and 2018 to actually put it back on stage. And you know, I perform this thing myself. It's kind of a marathon. It's 90 minutes, just me running around, singing, dancing, acting, and it's intense and it's a lot of fun, but a serious endeavor. So hopefully next year we'll be doing the 20th anniversary revival of Virtual Motion in Los Angeles.
That is awesome, definitely. And I can totally relate to that. It's kind of like a radio person who talks for 90 minutes. Been there, done that. I know that. Except nobody sees me, so that's kind of like some of the pressures off here. Because like if you people could see me right now, oh good holy hell. It's better that I get to be over here, which is cool. But I totally understand that, and I'm going to be like crossing my fingers for this because I'm there. You say those words, hyper opera, I'm there. That's all I can say. Okay,
awesome.
Now we're gonna flip to the other side of the fence here, and this is a quote, a very important quote that David has made, literally, and I can attest to this. It's an actual quote. So I want you to explain this to the folks because I think it's so cool. People all the time tell me the same thing, and I just want to know. So according to David, or from what people tell David, I smell good. I love this. He actually said this about himself. I smell good. Now, people tell me all the time, they're like, oh, my God, you smell so good, and it freaks me out. I'm like, why are you smelling me in the first place? Because that's weird. So I just want you to explain that. One of the cool things about David, not just all this other stuff, he smells good. So if you meet him, he's really not going to stink. That's awesome. I just thought that was so cool. I'm like, he totally talks about himself smelling good. Is this like an observation from many females or something?
So,
I just thought it was cool.
Yeah, here's the really funny thing. So the very first time I started dating online, I was living in New York City, and I was working in this office where a few different artistic companies shared the space. And there was a woman who was, we were with another company. We were working late one night, and she's like, hey, what are you working on? I'm like, oh, I'm putting together my first online profile. And this was 15 years ago. She's like, oh, cool, I'm doing that too. How about we trade? We can look at each other's and we'll give each other, feedback from, the guy's perspective and the girl's perspective. And I'm like, sure. So she looks through my entire thing, and it's long and it's detailed. And she finally reads through it, and she's like, listen, this all has to go. This is, you're great, but this is boring. This isn't interesting. Okay, here's how you start your profile. Start with, I smell good. And I looked at her like, what? What are you talking about? What? But would people want to know that? I thought, I don't know. So I was confused by it at the time, but I'm like, well, this is her suggestion. I will try it out. So I put it at the very top of my profile. And it has ever since, anytime I've had an online dating profile, I smell good is how it begins. And I have to tell you, I get so many comments on this. And it's if nothing else, it is a wonderful spark to begin a conversation. So the truth is, I have absolutely no idea if I smell good. My mother over the years has suggested I use deodorant, so perhaps it's not my normal state that I smell good. And I was actually telling someone this story recently, and they're like, wow, that girl really had a crush on you. And I'm like, what? And I'm a little bit sick sometimes, you know. I don't always pick up on all the clues. And I went back and I began thinking about it, and like, no, really? Because I wasn't thinking of it that way. She was just helping me with my profile. Anyway, P.S., she's now married with 2 kids, so I'm sure she's very happy. But perhaps I missed out on a little hint, and I need to pay a little bit more attention in the future.
Oh, my gosh. I so could see this as a play. Literally, I could see this playing out on stage somewhere, literally. The Life of David. Step 1, I did my profile. I smell good. Step 2, oh, my gosh, I'm going to stop picking on you. Okay, so thank you for explaining that because, yes, we just all thought that was like one of your key selling points. I smell really good. Number 2, I work really hard in the theater and the arts. Number 3, I went to Northwestern. All really good selling points, by the way. And your mom, by the way?
Thank you.
Oh, my God, folks. Your mother. Oh, so little and cute. I've seen pictures. So, oh, my God, she's just so little. She's just a little tiny person. It's so cute. They just have this nice little relationship. So I have to ask you about this because, of course, obviously, oftentimes, most of us artists are influenced by the people we love and those that are around us. So talk to me a little bit about some creatives come from a family background where they're like, you know what, honey, you need to get a real job because you don't know if it's going to pan out. Whereas some people have these wonderful things called supportive parents that are like, do whatever you love. Go with your gut. Go with your passion. I'm going to guess your mom is on that side of the fence. And so just tell me a little bit how she's inspired you, or has she inspired you in terms of professionally and obviously on the personal side of things. Tell us about Mom.
Mom is wonderful. Her name is Judith, and she is incredibly supportive. However, a few interesting things. And by the way, I actually point out that my mom's name is Judith because oftentimes kids, no matter how old they are, they talk about mom as just mom. And it's almost like their name gets erased by motherhood.
I know. I know.
They're just mom. And I actually I wrote one show. It's and I often subtitle my shows sort of like, you know, a hyper opera. To convey how this show is different aesthetically than the others. So I had this one show called Warning Explicit Material, and I think I called it an avant musical. Because it was an odd little piece. Disney actually did a great workshop of it years ago. Once they actually saw what the whole thing was, they're like, well, this is not a Disney show. But they were interested enough in me and the quality of the show to give it a little bit of support, which was wonderful. So in that show, I simply create a character whose name is Mom. She has lost her name. And there's something, I don't know, somehow important in acknowledging that can happen sometimes. So my mom is not a mom who has lost her name, even though she's been an amazing mom and she has devoted herself so much to me and my brother. So the inspirations that she's given me come in a lot of different realms, and it's not just in the arts. Yes, she's been super supportive of me in the arts. But my father, by the way, has also been very supportive while simultaneously suggesting still to this date that it's not too late for me to become an investment banker. He still has his hopes. And for my brother, he was always a little bit more practical. So he's like, well, you know, it's good to be an architect, but it's really hard to make a good living as an architect. If you're good with your hands and you're artistic, why not become a dentist? That was my dad's suggestion to my brother, which still irks him to no end.
Sure.
My mom, on the other hand, also finally got practical a number of years ago because it's a struggle, a life as an artist. You know, I'm still at my age, you know, not sure where the rent is coming from, you know, next month or the month after.
Right.
I'm continually scrambling for the next gig. And while the big artistic projects are really satisfying to do, they don't necessarily pay that well. In fact, when I was working on that show that was workshopped at Disney, my mentor for that project was Stephen Schwartz, the guy who wrote Pippin and Wicked and all those other amazing musicals over the years. And one time I was talking with Stephen, and he was like, listen, David, you just have to know there's an inverse relationship between the work that you love the most and the work that pays the most. So if you can find a nice balance in that, that's great. but don't expect that the work you're going to be paid for the best is necessarily going to be the most artistically satisfying. And that's something that I've actually taken to heart over the years because, you know, to make rent every month, I take on a video project here, I do something for a corporation over there, all so that I can continue working on my individual artistic pieces. So my mother over the years has also bemoaned the fact that she never gave me a more practical education, and she's been suggesting over the last few years that I actually should go and learn how to become a plumber, because plumbers are always needed. No matter if it's a recession or depression, plumbers are always going to be in demand and you will always get paid. I did not take her up on her advice, much to her chagrin. So the early influences I got from them, quite frankly, were simply to expose me to the arts. And I grew up with WQXR in the New York City area, the classical music station. It was just always playing. It was always on. It was natural for me to hear Mozart and Beethoven and Shostakovich. And they would take me up in the summertime, and we'd spend a weekend up in Lenox, and we would hear Bernstein conduct Shostakovich's Fifth, and that was just normal. So it was the water in which I swam, and it made me think that I could participate in the continuum of arts over the years. I actually had an amazing experience last week. I was back in New York last week, and I met up with that middle school teacher that I mentioned before, the one who was so deeply influential in my life. And the reason we met up was because, and I had not seen him in 30 years. My mother had become extremely involved in that middle school, specifically helping them produce the school musical every year. And this teacher, who I didn't realize how young he was at the time. You know, when you're 11 years old, a teacher, no matter if they're 25 or 60, they seem really old to you. So in my mind, this had been going on forever. In truth, he'd only done it for 2 or 3 years before I'd gotten to the school. And my mom originally had come on just to help, you know, sew some costumes, you know, the kind of thing moms do to help. And because she loved the program so much and this teacher was so inspiring, she ended up becoming the producer for the entire musical. And when I say the entire musical, this guy was so inspiring in a school of 600 kids that ranged from some of the richest kids in the world, this was in Stamford, Connecticut, to other kids who lived in the projects and were on food stamps. It was an incredibly diverse group of people. He would get almost 200 kids on stage, almost a third of the entire school. So it was this enormous production. We were so into this, and it was so professional in some aspects, we would do an annual cast recording of the musical that year.
Oh my God!
We would bring in, you know, it made us feel like we were really doing this. We were actors, we were singers, we were putting on a show.
Sure.
And it was just one of the most inspiring things that made me want to, as well as believe that I could have a life in the arts, and that my mom threw herself into it to the point where she was literally the person who was producing the show year after year, made an absolutely incredible difference, to the point where I think she may have actually regretted it over the years, that she made it seem like, yes, of course you can do this, and it will be easy. And it has been in no way easy, but it was a wonderful thing to sit down with him and her, and have the two of them excavate their history together in front of me, things that, you know, they talked about as adults, which when I was 11 and 12 and 13, I had no idea was going on behind the scenes. The struggles they had convincing the school to put some serious resources behind it, give them extra time, et cetera, et cetera. So she really, really went to bat for me at that point, and that was wildly influential. And the reason we all met last week was because I was back in New York, and there is a production of Sunday in the Park with George starring Jake Gyllenhaal that is on Broadway right now. And he had taken me, along with my mother, to see the original production of Sunday in the Park with George when I was 13 years old. And when I saw that production, that was like the light bulb moment in my life, where I looked at what was happening on stage, and I was like, I didn't know you could do that, and I want to do all of that. And in many ways been, the larger pursuit in my life. Even though I'm not really composing for opera or musicals anymore, that was the more than first half of my life's pursuit. And it's also what has led me into film and storytelling and everything else I'm up to.
You betcha. Now, I don't want to forget to say this in case your mother listens. So, Mom, I want you to listen to me loud and clear. I'm strongly encouraging David that he should embark perhaps on maybe looking into maybe being a funeral director. Because we always need one of those really safe jobs. So, like, maybe he could do it on the side, Mom. See, I'm trying to encourage him, even though I'm a hugely creative person. And I want to thank you for the other comments you made, because I try to say this all the time on my Facebook page. I say it on the show a lot, especially to those that are listening in, because I myself do the exact same thing, and I've had to year after year after year. I say it all the time. I'm a professional author, and I make nothing. And I know I'm never going to make anything. And I know I have to write textbooks that I hate, that are technical and boring, but it pays the bills. So, kids, if you're listening, here's a hint. You're going to get that excitement in your belly. You're going to get to do what you love. You're going to follow your dream, and you're going to be broke as a joke. But you're going to do what you love. One day, you might get that Oscar stage. You might get that Tony stage. You might get that whatever. So don't stop dreaming, folks. Just remember, you might be a little broke for, like, ever. But I'm okay with being broke. As long as I can afford wine, I'm good, and the kids are safe. I'm like, we're all good. But enough about me. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so we want to talk about something very serious here, which is obviously, of course, you have that very large political background, which I would surmise has led you to be so very active as a lobbyist. I want to talk about your endeavors as a lobbyist. But first, because I know we share the same thoughts, without going into too much depth, I'm just curious because I am a Facebook friend, so I know where you stand on this. So I asked all of my new guests coming on this question, and I am I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, I'm the first one to admit I didn't vote for Trump. He's not my president. And here's my question to you, because I want to know how things are in California, because I'm in Wisconsin. Half the time I spend in New York. So everybody's got their own opinion on things. And what I guess I'm trying to find out from your neck of the woods is if seeing and feeling the same kinds of things we are, which is there's a sense of hopelessness in some circles. There's a sense of clear anger, no matter where you stand between anti or pro-Trump. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of hatred. There's a lot of defriending. There's a lot of disconnection between the citizens of the country, whether you're for or against Trump, I guess is what I'm saying. So I guess, how are things on your side of the fence? Because I find it very discouraging, very despairing, and I'm very concerned about the future. So talk about that a little bit, and then tell us a little bit about, because you were out recently lobbying again. I know it's a big bulk of your time. So tell us, give us a summarization of the main, or the bulk, I should say, of, because obviously you lobby for all different things, but give us the core root of what you do regularly in that realm.
Sure. So, people in California and especially San Francisco are distraught. And we are looking for a way to make a difference. And it's really hard.
Sure.
There's a level of powerlessness that is pervasive. There are only so many times you can look at the TV and scream at it and shake your head before you feel like you're wasting your time. So I've been involved with, a bunch of marches. The Women's March here was fantastic. There have been some small marches that I've sometimes literally run into, just like walking around the Mission, like, oh, there's some people marching. I don't know what they're marching about, and I can tell it's an anti-Trump thing. Okay, I'll join it. And I spend the next hour just marching with them.
That's awesome.
And that's, in some ways, that is, and that feels like the old San Francisco and getting out there and doing things. But what I have been going back to time and again since the election, aside from eating my feelings and putting on a lot of weight, I have been. No, I'm serious. I got a scale because I'm like, oh, this cannot continue this way, and I just finally put myself on a diet.
For Lent.
No,
wait, that's right. You can't. Well, no. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I think we're all dealing with this in our own ways. And I can't tell you the number of people I've talked to who are like, yeah, I've been eating my feelings because I have no other way to powerfully express how I'm feeling that makes a difference. And I think we're dealing with, people talk a lot about a post-truth society or political realm, and that's certainly part of it. But something that I think has been getting chipped away at further and further, and it has reached a new level, is a level of shamelessness. in politics especially. And it's pervasive throughout the society, but especially in politics. You know, the idea, if you think back, I think a lot of people who don't know our relatively modern political history have this idea of, oh, yeah, Nixon, Watergate, and then he was impeached, right? And that's why we got rid of him. They're like, no, Nixon resigned. And in our current political atmosphere, I find it so remarkable because he felt a level of public shame that he decided it would be better to resign than to stay on and be impeached. Now, you can actually say, if you wanted to, that Clinton took this to a new level. He actually, and people forget this as well, Clinton was impeached. That doesn't mean he was removed from office, but the impeachment proceedings went through. And some people think that, you know, it was an incredible display of shamelessness that he would continue on. They don't necessarily see the witch hunts that I saw and that many other people saw. And it's not that Bill Clinton is free from blame. He certainly is for a host of different things. But the larger point is that our political realm has been chipped away at time and again to the place where we get to now, which is being caught lying as the President of the United States or as the Attorney General is no longer a shameful enough thing to resign. In a way that I would wager 40 years ago was. So the question I've been asking myself, and a number of different organizations I work with have been asking themselves, is what are the levers of power that make a difference today in our world with this current environment and this current president? And, you know, to jump ahead for a second, I was in Washington, D.C. this past week. This Tuesday, I had the honor of sitting down with leader Nancy Pelosi. It was an extraordinary thing. And I did it through an organization called J Street. J Street is a pro-Israel, pro-peace organization, one which is so loathed by certain segments of society that while I have been working with it, I have been called a self-hating Jew, an anti-Semite Jew, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason that happens is because I take the stand that I love Israel. I want to see Israel exist. I want the Palestinian people to have their own country and self-determination as well. And that statement alone has been branded me as someone who is a self-hating Jew. I think that it is a completely false assertion. I think more importantly, or as importantly, that in the same way that I can love America and hate our current president and come out and say that with all the vehemence I have, I can also do the same about Israel. And quite frankly, I can do the same about any other country. Now, I happen to have a particular interest in Israel, but I also have a particular interest in the country Namibia that used to be the former Sud-West Africa. Mostly because I studied it while I was in college. I have a very, very personal and emotional relationship to how things are going in that country. So even though I've only visited Namibia and I've never lived there and I'm not a citizen, I have strong opinions about the Namibian government. And as far as I'm concerned, even though I am not a Namibian, I am allowed to have those opinions in the same way that I'm allowed to for America and for Israel. But Israel has become such a hot-button topic that those sometimes within the Jewish community and sometimes outside the Jewish community take a stand that you shouldn't say those things out loud. You should deal with them privately. And I just completely disagree with that. So this last week, I was in Washington, D.C. for the annual J Street conference. And one of the things we do is we take time to actually meet with our representatives. And living in San Francisco, Nancy Pelosi is my representative. And I have been calling her for the last many weeks to share my opinions, both with her regional as well as her D.C. office, about any number of things that Trump has been throwing down the pipeline. But the things that I was most interested in conveying to her, and by the way, I didn't meet with her one-on-one. It was me and a dozen other people also from her district. J Street was kind enough to actually get in touch and set up the meeting. And when we sat down with them, with her, and also a few people on her policy team, the two biggest things that I was conveying are simply that we encouraged her and let her know that our opinion of Trump's nomination of ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, is a person who should not be an ambassador to anywhere, especially Israel. He's a man who's come out in favor of a one-state solution, i.e., Israel annexing the West Bank, which is just completely and wholly unacceptable for so many moral, ethical, and legal reasons. And he's also a person who has zero diplomatic experience, and 5 of the previous ambassadors to Israel actually made a public statement, put out a letter that they all signed saying that this man is a danger not just to Israel, but to the United States, that if you say the wrong thing in a tinderbox like the Middle East, and he has been saying things that are the most reprehensible things I've heard any politician say. If you just casually say those things, you can literally start a war. So the ambassadors came out against David Friedman. And David Friedman, by the way, has been nominated for this post because of what he has done for Trump in the past. What he's done for Trump in the past is he is Trump's main bankruptcy attorney. He is the guy who's gotten Trump out of all the most horrible trouble Trump has ever gotten into. So Trump nearly owes this guy his life. But he would be the most terrible thing. So we talked with Pelosi about this, and she's in the House of Representatives, the Senate, the one who's voting on the nomination. But, you know, she's still a woman of incredible influence. So we asked her to speak out publicly on this. And the other, there were a few other subjects, but one of the other biggest ones was concerning the Iran nuclear treaty. And that one, we were simply encouraging her to do everything she could to stop the current Congress from trying to roll back the treaty that has been in effect for a year, which has already shown to be remarkably successful, that they've already poured cement into their main centrifuge, which they had been using to generate weapon-grade nuclear material. And they've been completely open with everything else. Meanwhile, the Republicans are crying bloody murder because they had one missile test, which, yeah, it would be great if they didn't have that missile test. But they want to roll back the entire treaty that Obama had put together. And I think the treaty is actually making the world and making Israel and making the United States a safer place. So we were talking with her on some very specific policy points, and she was fantastic in how she listened to us and then engaged with us in a conversation. And the thing that I was amazed at, you know, I was actually, I interned for my congressman when I was in college, and it was a great experience to actually see what it's like from the inside. But I'd never actually really sat down with a representative like this and talked to them. And I was like, wow, this is actually representative democracy at work, like in front of my face. And it made me feel like all those phone calls that I'd been making over the last few months, registering my opinion on this or that thing, like, well, maybe it does make a difference. She actually seemed to be genuinely interested in what we had to say, and also the vehemence of the strength of our opinion. So it was a truly incredible meeting, and it was a really wonderful thing.
Very, very nice. And, of course, we don't want to forget to mention this, too, obviously, because I've said this to people all the time. They think, well, why should I go participate in a march, or why should I go here, why should I go here? Almost believing that sentiment that no matter what I say, no matter what I do, it's not going to make a difference. But clearly it does make a difference. And I say this all the time to people. Don't think that you're just an idle individual. Marching matters. Speaking to the right people matters. Making your opinion heard matters. Making the right choices to be in the right place, connecting with people, continuing to speak out, period. I think it's wonderful. So thank you for that. And thank you for the service that you're providing. I'm sure you don't hear that often enough. It's not all of us that get a time, you know, to do that, obviously. And I wish that I did. And I wish that I would have been in New York City at the time of their march that was going on. But I'm like, well, I have some things in the works. And I can't wait to announce them. And all of my friends will leave me on Facebook. Oh, wait, no. The Trump supporters will leave me. I noticed that. The minute you say, even the imprint, I said it the other day, I was like, great speech you gave, except you probably didn't write it. And it's all about action, not about talk. And look at that. 4 people left right away. So I'm like, you can automatically guarantee if I talk about that, or if I talk about Hollywood sometimes, or if I talk about other things, it's like, okay. Now, because I am California stupid, tell me, San Francisco is how far from LA?
Drive, it's a 6-hour drive.
Okay, so you're not close enough to be affected by the Oscars, of course. Okay, so we don't have to worry about that whole thing because we had a little chit-chat about that the other day.
People really don't care about the Oscars up here.
How funny is that? We're living our lives, and it's 6 hours away, but we really don't care about that. So, okay, fine.
Really
I want to ask
care.
you a question because one of the things that you talked about, but it's not really clear because you talked about doing the book Fuck Tinder, and then there's the book Never Meet Your Idols. Now, is that a book? Because I couldn't see that you had actually done it and published it, or is that just another thing that's in the works? It was a little unclear to me.
Right. So, excellent question. It is still in the works. I finished the first draft of it a few years ago. I was about to publish it, self-publish it, and I just decided I was going to wait just a little bit longer. I wanted to there were two things. One, it needed a full edit. And I was hoping to get on with a publisher that had a strong editor who could actually work with me on that. And the second is I was also hoping that there are other parts of my life where my career would have blown up a little bit first that could help give it a little bit of traction. So that is sitting on my hard drive waiting to be released, which I'm hoping it's possible that along with Fuck Tinder, once that comes out, it'll generate enough interest and energy so that I'll be able to put that out in short order after it, even though I wrote it first.
Okay. But that's sometimes how things happen. I don't think people realize that because they get all excited. And I have friends who are filmmakers, and they do a film, and then, you got people edging at them, when's it going to be out? When's it going to be out? And they're like, well, we shot it, but now there's all this editing we have to do, but then we can't get back to it. And I have a friend who hasn't gotten back to it for like 2 years, and I'm like, people don't get it, life comes, you know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, we're going to do this movie or this book. Oh wait, life happened. And then all of a sudden that's back a little bit. So I'm glad to hear that because I'm excited about that. Because when I read the Never Meet Your Idols thing, and this is funny, I did an entire screenplay about wanting to meet Kiefer Sutherland. It's the 25 different ways that I tried to get an interview and get a date with him. And then, very sadly, someone very dear to me who has met him multitudes of times told me something about him, and it wrecked everything. And when I saw your title, Never Meet Your Idols, all I could think of was he in my head knowing about this Kiefer Sutherland thing? Like, could he know that this is just my heartache? Like, oh my God, I never want to meet my idol because I'm so devastated. Because that happens sometimes.
Well, you are going to
all up a pedestal.
You're gonna hate me now. I've met Kiefer Sutherland.
Oh no. I'm sorry, but I can't. What is that? Is that the phone going right now? Oh, no, I can't talk to you anymore. See ya. What the hell?
I met him in the most unlikely of places. I was living in LA at the time, and I went up to North Hollywood. I think I was going to see a show somewhere up there, and I got there really early, so I decided to stop into a bar, which I don't really often do, but I didn't know where to spend the time at that like 6 o'clock. Sure. So I pop in this total dive bar in North Hollywood, and I walk in, and I think I did meet a friend there who was going to the show with me as well. And while I'm sitting, I mean, this place is it's a wreck. This place it's such a horrible bar. And as I'm sitting there, my friend turns to me and he's like, "Don't look, but to your left, there are two people you have to see. One." The guy wearing the like that baseball jersey, that's Kiefer, and the person who just walked in and sat down next to him, Carol Hannah. So I get up and I go to the bathroom, and I'm able to spot them as I walk to the bathroom. And I later found out that they were roommates. Like when they were early in their careers, they were living in Hollywood together, and they were roommates, and they've been like best friends ever since then, apparently. And that's cool. This is a decade ago, but they would just get together in dive bars where people would not expect to see them because they went to like some fancy, trendy place. There'd be paparazzi everywhere. But, Kiefer just puts on a baseball cap and he heads to the worst dive bar in North Hollywood. And he calls up Daryl and says, "Hey, meet me over here. Let's have a beer." So I went over and I just said hello to them very, very quickly. And I figured if I talked for any more than like 10 seconds, I'd make a fool of myself. So I just said, "Hey, you guys are great. And not gonna bother you because I know you're here to not be bothered, but I just had to say you're great. Okay, goodbye."
Wow. You touched the great one. He touched the great one, folks. Ouch.
I did.
Yeah, so much for talking to him. I think, I pretty much lost all enthusiasm for David now. Just kidding. But since you brought that question up, okay, so now we're on to the token question. I integrated this question. It's actually kind of almost the running joke of the show. And why? Because here's the backstory. This is the most important question I'm going to ask in this interview. Do not screw this question up. I tell this to everyone. Don't screw it up.
All right.
Okay. So I know when I ask you this question, all you're going to say is, why, yes, Cindy, I do. Okay? So let me give you a little background here. Besides David, of course, there's 5 people in the world that I want to interview. Like my top 5. You know how you might have top 5 people you want to do a theater with, or you might want to do a movie with. Well, there's an actor on my list, and I've been trying to get an interview for him almost 18 months. Okay, and we're almost to the point where I'm just going to give up a leg for this, which is ridiculous. So I thought, let's make it part of the show. So I'm going to ask every single person that comes on, and I know you're going to say to me, I have a cell phone number, Cindy, and I'm going to give it to you right now. So here we go. I'm going to say a name. You're going to say, yes, I have that number. So here we go. He's an actor. I'm sure you've heard of Michael Madsen before.
Yes.
And you're going to say that we have his cell phone number?
Yes, of course. I have Michael Madsen's cell phone number.
I'm so not believing you. Like, you actually don't have his number.
I wish I did. No,
Damn
I don't.
It, man.
I'm so
Come
sorry.
on. I'm going to have to start giving up my kids for this. Good God. Well, no, I've made it the running joke because it's like, seriously, what does one have to do, for God's sake? I mean, you know who he is, right? I mean, he's shares on my list. Michael Madsen's on my list. You've got those people that just move you, that just are so, they're so amazing in their talent to you, that they're so impressive to you. And I'm like, I just think it's so ridiculous that you have to jump through so many hoops to get to somebody. You know what I mean? And I'm like, at a certain point, I'm going to give this up. But it's like, you know what? I never heard you ask. But I thought, you of all people, David, you're gonna have it. You're going to be the one. So, no cell phone.
Sorry.
And he's Matt Kiefer Sutherland. Yeah, this is going to be a better interview by the second.
I feel like I've failed you.
But in other news, let's talk about something positive. I guess I'll still like you for the duration of this. Now, really exciting fact, and I'm very proud about this. You are the founder of the New York nonprofit Raw Impressions, 170 musicals, 60 shorts, hugely impressive. I'm familiar with Raw Impressions, but please tell the listening audience how you got involved with the project, what is so fundamentally important, meaning why should people participate?
Sure. Well, Raw Impressions sadly has closed its doors. It's no longer operating, but it had a fantastic run. Yeah, it had a fantastic run from 2001 to 2006 or so. And essentially, it came out of my reaction to 9/11. I had been commissioned to write a new opera for a company called Mabou Minds, which was founded by Philip Glass and Joanne Akelitis 40 years ago. And the librettist I was working with, understandably, couldn't function after 9/11. She's like, why should we write a song or an opera or anything? People are dying. And a lot of my friends who are artists were feeling similarly paralyzed. And at a certain point, I realized it just wasn't healthy to, just stare at the CNN 24/7 and be depressed. So I was like, you know what we need to do? We need to get people together. We need to force them to do work, to do it quickly, and to just get it back out there, because artists are actually important right now. It doesn't feel like they're important to everyone, but they really, truly are. And I feel like the same is actually true right now. While it is not the same kind of national tragedy as 9/11, I feel like the turbulence the Trump administration is putting this country through requires an artistic response. But at the time, what I simply did was I got together with a friend of mine from Northwestern, Patrick Mellon, and he had a theater company, a theater space. And we came up with this idea to get 10 writers and 10 composers who'd never met, pair them up, and we would give them a very strict schedule to write 10 10-minute musicals in 10 days. We would give them 10 performers, 2 directors, 2 music directors. We'd chop the whole thing up so it could be rehearsed and done off script as an actual final presentation 10 days after we began. And it was a huge success the very first time we did it. And we were going to do it just once. It was just to hey, get people, back working again after 9/11. And people were immediately like, when is the next one? And we're like, well, we weren't planning on the next one. You have to do another one. So we just kept on doing them again and again. And then this was 2001. There was a newfangled application that Apple had just put out called Final Cut Pro. And I had a friend who had a Canon XL1, and I finally realized, I think we have the technology now to make digital films that actually look like films. So I took the same process and I converted it for film, and that was Raw Impressions Productions, or RIP, of the RIP Fest. And we started making not only short films, but specifically movie musicals. So we made, as you said, 170 stage musicals, 60 short films. We even dabbled in dance theater and circus and a bunch of other stuff. And, speaking of, being in Chicago, I was just hanging out when I was in D.C. With a director and choreographer, Jessica Reddish, who took a bunch of the ideas and the inspiration behind Raw Impressions and brought it back to Chicago. And she started a company there. I think it's just called the Music Theater Company. And they started out generating short work, similar to how Raw Impressions did. And then they started doing full-length work. And it was great to see the way the work we had done in New York had been spread to Chicago. And so many people have had a chance to work on these projects. And it's been a really incredible thing for me over the years, because I was able to, especially for the film work, start working with people who I had just been fans of for years. So the director and former actor Lonnie Price, he was one of the directors for our films, as was Ted Sperling, who has both directed and music directed more Broadway shows than I can count. Tanya Pinkins, who's won Tonys for her work on Broadway for Carolina Change and Jelly's Last Jam. People like Rachel Axler, who's currently a writer-producer on Veep, DJ Javerbaum, who's the head writer of The Daily Show. And I was just thrilled that all these people were coming to our company, because what I offered them was not a lot of money. Frankly, we actually paid everyone exactly $0. That was our democracy. But we made it so that other people could continue doing whatever jobs they had, whether they just had a day job to pay the bills or whether they were the head writer of The Daily Show. And what we promised them was that they would come here and they would have complete and total freedom to write what they like, and that we would make sure that in an extremely short period of time, they would go from having not so much as an idea to a fully finished production, whether it was a film or a theater piece. And people were so excited by having that opportunity and to have it done so quickly, because you talked about this a little bit before, but there's so many projects that take years and years to come together. For film, it is not uncommon for a film to take a decade from idea to finished product. My film Total Novice, which is on my front burner right now, I began writing that 11 years ago, and we are hopefully going to be shooting it later this year. Film just takes a really long time, and even though you would think theater is easier to put together and less expensive, for the bigger commercial productions, it's actually not. So it is also very common for a show to be in development and to go from workshop to reading for easily a decade. For myself, over the years, one thing I've done is I've been a manager to different singers and songwriters. So I was managing this woman, Val Vigoda, and she has a show that I saw the first workshop of at the La Jolla Playhouse 10 years ago. It is opening up off-Broadway next month. On April 14th, Ernest Shackleton Loves Me opens at the Second Stage Theater, and I am so thrilled for her. But you have to have such extraordinary perseverance in any of these artistic disciplines that you have to stick with something literally for a decade to see it from concept to completion. So with Raw Impressions, what we were offering them, that from concept to completion in 10 days, and then you see it and you see an audience react to it, it was a blessing that people traveled for. So it was a great run. And after about 5 years, I had invested every ounce of myself into it.
Sure.
I tried to get some other people to run it for me, but I was just done. I was ready to move on at the time, and that's when I actually I moved out to Los Angeles and started working in TV. So sadly, the company has not continued, but it was great. And something I also learned over time was that some companies actually don't need to continue. At first, I thought it was a failure that it's not become this incredible institution, but it was actually exactly what we needed at the time for artists in New York to really just re-engage and remember that we were doing important work just by being artists.
Exactly. I agree. And thank you again for that contribution as well, because look at all the things that you've given. That's 170, of one, 60 of another. Just add that up. That's huge right there. And then he wonders why I was nervous when he came on the show. Hello? Duh. And it continues, folks. Since you brought up Total Novice, I know that your campaign just finished recently. So I think it's interesting to tell the folks what they have to look forward to when the movie comes out, which is, I know very loosely what it's based on, which is, of course, it's a story of two different souls who are searching what we're all basically looking for, the same thing we're all looking for, some form of connectivity. Yeah. So talk a little bit about number one, what the story is about, and number two, did you reach your goal, or can we still help you, or give us a status on that?
Yeah. Sure. So the campaign is finished. It did well. We didn't quite reach the goal, but I always knew at the beginning that I would have to be seeking additional larger investors in order to fully fund the production. So this was a great seed round, and now we're off and running. I'm going to be heading down to L.A. later this month to begin doing casting and to meet with some of my producers and my cinematographers so we can actually really begin to figure out where we're going to shoot this, when we're going to shoot it, and put together the entire schedule and the rest of what we need. Nice. In terms of the story, Total Novice is about the craziest night of my life. And it's also, that's the first two acts in one night. And then the final act is when things came back to haunt me 4 months later, one more night. So the story, in short, and I've also performed this, by the way, as an evening-length monologue. I've done this as a solo show because as I've been developing it over the years, I've just been wanting to get it out to people. And I developed it just, frankly, just telling people stories the way I'm telling you a story right now. I would tell people over lunch and dinner. Sometimes I would take over dinner parties where I would be like, no, I shouldn't keep on going. Let me jump to the end. They're like, no, don't jump to the end. We want to hear every last bit of this. And the reason they want to hear every last bit of it is because I did crazy things this night. And the reason I did crazy things because it was a very, very special and different night for me. So what happened was, as a precursor to this night, I was riding my bicycle in Los Angeles on the Venice bike path. I was having a perfectly lovely day when the seat to my bicycle fell off while I was riding. I had toe clips on my bicycle, so I fell off backwards. The bike went forwards. The pedals cranked around and snapped my tibia and fibula in half instantly. It was one of the most painful experiences of my entire life. And I was laid up for the next 10 weeks. I was essentially marooned in my apartment. And quite frankly, I went stir crazy, This is during the holidays, so all my friends had gone home and no one was around, and I didn't see human beings for almost 10 weeks. And then I got my cast off a week earlier than I was supposed to. So I came home from the hospital on a Friday late afternoon, and I just wanted to go out for the first time, and I wanted to go out with all of my friends, and all of them had plans. They all had dates. They were busy, one thing or the other, and I was like, well, what do I do? Even though you may be surprised to hear this, and people often are, I am actually a really shy person if I'm in a situation that I'm unfamiliar with. So if you put me on a stage in front of 1,000 people, I can share the most intimate details of my life. I can make extraordinary connection with people en masse. I'm great. If you put me down into a bar and you give me a glass of beer, starting a conversation with a total stranger, I find almost impossible. It's just one of those things where I become this little wallflower. So for me, going out to a bar, I've never met anyone, male or female. I've never made a connection going out. I've tried, and then I come home and I feel like even worse about myself that, like, I still haven't learned to do something that everyone else seems to know how to do. So that night to go out to a bar, I decided, well, what else should a guy in my position do? And the answer, not what everyone would come up with, but for me, it was to go on to, and this is 10 years ago, I went on to Craigslist Casual Encounters, and I responded to the first 100 posts I found. Now, the reason I did this was because I have a friend, a woman, who I went to Princeton with, who told me she had done this. And she had a great experience. She met a guy that night, and they went home together, and, like, it was awesome. She had described it actually as, there was one night where I decided I wanted to order in, and she wasn't talking about food. So I thought, well, if she did this nice Jewish girl from Princeton, that maybe there were others out there just like her, and they were just waiting for me. But she gave me a few pieces of advice. She said, listen, most of the posts up there, they're fakes, they're frauds, they're phonies, they're prostitutes, they're porn sites, they're all kinds of different things, and you don't know which is which going into it. And it's all about how quickly you can respond. So it's a numbers game. You just have to copy, paste, send out a short message with your picture and hope that someone responds. So I was so desperate, and I was so stir crazy for having been locked up in my little apartment, unable to walk or drive for all this time, that I just responded to every ad I could find. And I was afraid because I didn't have a phone that got my email with immediate notifications back then. I was afraid that somehow someone would respond to me and I wouldn't see the message in time, and they would move on to the next person. So I realized that there was a way around this that I could make sure that they would have the opportunity to get to me more immediately, and that was by including my home phone number in every email I sent out. And it's that kind of stupidity that got me into one of the most incredible stories and adventures of my life. And I continued doing this throughout the entire evening to the point where there is going to be a drinking game that is going to come out along with the film when it's released. And basically, anytime David does something so stupid that no one in their right mind would actually do, you have to take a drink, and people will be wasted after half an hour.
Oh, my God.
So what happened essentially was that no one called me. No one wrote me, and I decided to go to bed, and this was a really stupid idea, and I'll try again tomorrow. I'll get together with my friends. Everything will be fine. And then literally as I am turning out the light, the phone rings, and I have the following conversation. There's a woman who simply says, hey, is this David? I'm like, yeah, this is David. It's like, oh, cool, so I got your email. And I wanted to ask who she was because I'd sent, 100 emails out, but I felt that would sort of be inappropriate. I wanted to make her feel special, and that would make her feel less than special to know that I'd been emailing everyone I could possibly find. So I simply said, yeah, that's cool. She's like, great, so do you want a party? And I did not know what that meant. So the reason I didn't know what that meant is that, and this is where the title of the film comes in, I never did drugs growing up, not in high school, not in college. The first time I got high was only after I broke my leg, and the Ambien they gave me wasn't helping put me to sleep. And finally, a friend of mine said, have you tried smoking pot? I'm like, I don't smoke pot. They're like, no, for your leg. It's medicinal. It's actually medicinal. People joke about, it's really medicinal marijuana. I actually used it for the first time just to deal with the pain in my leg and to help me fall asleep. So that was just a few months before this phone call. I am such a square that when she said, do you want to party, I simply did not know what she meant. So I responded to her. I'm like, yeah, I want to celebrate because I can walk again. Now, she had no idea what I was talking about. So she tried to clarify. She's like, no, I mean, do you want to smoke some? And I knew she wasn't talking about cigarettes. So I tried to be cool, and I was like, yeah, I'm down with the Mary Jane, because that was the only word I could think of for marijuana at the time. So she starts laughing at me like, this is a great way to start any relationship, with complete miscommunication left and right. And she's like, no. I'm talking about the other white smoke. I'm like, other white smoke? I don't know what that means. And then I also began to realize, the other white smoke, that's a joke. That is a pork/drug joke. Like the other white meat? This is the other white smoke. I still don't know what she's talking about. And now I'm starting to get scared because I am in way over my head. And I say, listen, I don't know where to get that stuff. And she's like, it's okay. I've got a guy. Of course she does. So now I realize it's time for me to admit that I haven't done this before. And I say, listen, what happens next? How does this work? And she's like, well, do you have a car? I'm like, sure. She's like, can you pick me up? I'm like, yeah. Where should I get you? She's like, meet me at the Shell station at Fountain and La Brea. And I knew this was a terrible idea, but I couldn't believe she'd said it. So I'm like, do you mean the gas station? She's like, yeah. I'm like, well, where are you now? She's like, I'm at a friend's. I'm like, how about I pick you up there? It's January. It's cold out. No, it's better if you meet me at the gas station. So that was one of those moments where anyone in their right mind would hang up the phone, say, it's very nice meeting you, goodbye.
Yes.
Instead, I just said, right. But I hadn't seen people in so long, and I was just amazed that anyone had called me, that I had actually somehow connected to someone through the ether. So I simply said, okay, I'll come pick you up. And I said, but one thing I want to ask, just so I can find you more easily. But in truth, I wanted to know who I was meeting up with. I was like, I sent you a picture, a headshot of mine. Can you send me a picture so I know what you look like? And she said, what are you talking about? Why didn't you Google me? Like, how would I Google you? I don't even know your name. She's like, of course. It said in my post, porn star Becca Blue wants to party with you. Google me for pictures. And suddenly I remembered this post, and I run back to my computer. My friend had told me, half the things on here are total, fabrications. So I figured that was, another phony thing, just trying to steal my email address or something. And I Googled her really quickly. And by the way, Becca Blue is not her actual name, or not even her stage name. But sorry about that. That was a made-up one. So Googling it will not help you find anything other than references to the film. But I Googled her, and I immediately saw pictures of her from that year's Adult Video Awards in Vegas. And I still was telling myself, there is no way that I can be on the phone with this woman. And despite that, it was just too great an adventure, too amazing a possible story to say no to, and also because I just hadn't gotten out and seen anyone in so long, I said, I'll see you in half an hour. And I got in my car and I drove over there. And the rest of the night is a level of true insanity, but the most important part of the night that actually made it the most interesting was that when she came back to my place, we'd had a chance to talk for, half an hour on the way back to my place. And I'd gotten a sense of what she'd gone through over the last few years while she's been involved with the business and as a hustler. And I simply said, as we got back in, she was telling me her rules, and I told her my rule. My rule is that we're not going to have sex tonight. And when I took that off the table, suddenly we began interacting with each other in a totally different way. And we, I think because of that, got to a place where we felt a level of intimacy like I had rarely ever experienced before. Now, there was another reason, and that was that we smoked crack all night. This is coming from a kid, me, who at the time was 35 and had smoked pot just for the first time a few months earlier. Suddenly, I spent the entire night smoking crack. And the reason was because I told her, listen, whatever you want to do tonight, we will do that. This is your night. And she's like, great, I want to smoke some crack. So we picked up the crack. And I had never had any experience with anything like this before. People are always asking me, what's it like? Is it like Coke? And I'm like, I don't know. I've never done Coke. I really am a total novice when it comes to these things. I have no way to compare it to anything else. I just did it. I know what I experienced that one night. And I smoked it that one night, and I've never gone back to it. And in some ways, I suppose I'm lucky about that, but the drug has been demonized horribly. If I'd gone around telling people that I snorted coke one night. People would be like, oh, that's so retro 80s of you. Like, you know, it would be no big deal. But crack has been vilified in so many different ways that most of the people in my cohort have zero experience with it. And it's considered to be the most horrible, most addictive, terrible drug in orders of magnitude compared to cocaine. And the truth is it's primarily cocaine. It has some additives in there depending on what you're smoking. Not that it's good for you in any capacity, but the truth is it is no more evil, generally speaking, than cocaine is.
Right.
But there's something about our society that has vilified it where people are like, oh my God, I cannot believe you did that. So for me, it's exploring the film explores what happens when you put a man and a woman together who are both terribly lonely, seeking connection, seeking love, seeking acceptance, trying to figure out their place in the world, and you put them into a room for one night with a lot of crack. And for me, what happened was I made one of the most intimate connections with another human being in my entire life. Now, what happened after that the next morning was that I wondered if any of it was real and was it just drugs. And she left that morning, and while we had moments of extraordinary intimacy that night, again, not sex, there was one moment around 4 a.m. where I was exhausted, but she turned to me, and it was a peculiar moment because she turned to me as I was walking to the kitchen to get some water, and she was sitting down, and she took my hand. And she stopped me, and she looked at me, and she said, do you still love me? Now, this is a woman I'd met about 5 hours before. But we had made such this incredible connection that it felt like we'd been married for 20 years. You know, it actually felt like that moment in Fiddler on the Roof where they have that beautiful duet, do you love me? It felt like that moment, except this is with a woman I'd met 5 hours earlier, and somehow we had been so honest with one another. You know, I compare it a little bit to, I don't know if you've ever met a person on a train, or a total stranger, where you're never going to see them again. And this has happened to me both in terms of what I've shared and what other people have shared with me. When I meet a stranger like that, I feel a certain openness. I can tell them anything. And they often also feel in the same way that they can tell me anything. So I have sometimes shared intimate details of my life with a total stranger on a train, things that I would be embarrassed to tell my parents about, my best friends about, things that I think are going into the secret vault in a certain kind of way. And I felt that this evening as well. And you combine that with a sweet soul and a lot of crack cocaine, and you get a truly incredible story. Now, where the story takes a weird turn is that I actually began telling people the story, and I began writing about it. And one thing I realized was that I did not know her perspective on this. I did not know what she thought of the entire night. You know, for me, I'd never done anything like it, and I wasn't going to do anything like it ever again. And I was wondering, could she? I mean, this is something she does all the time. So I tried to get back in touch with her, to talk with her, to see what her experience was. And I couldn't reach her. I couldn't find her. But at one point, she'd actually told me that things are so hard sometimes that she didn't have a place to live. And I told her, if you're ever in a spot where you're like literally homeless, call me. You can always crash with me. That's the kind of like best friend feeling that we had with one another that first night. So out of the blue, 4 months after we met, she calls me and she's like, listen, I need a place to stay. And I've come to my senses at this point, and I'm like, you can't actually stay with me, but I want to help you out. And I wanted to let you know that I'm writing this piece about you. I don't know what form it's going to take. I don't know if it's a book or a radio piece or a documentary or a film. But I would love to talk with you, and I would love to do a formal interview with you. I'll pay you for your time. You can use the money to get a motel. And she's like, that would be amazing. And she was also really excited about the idea of being the star of this film. So we met. We did the interview. I paid her for the interview, and she was incredible during the interview. She was just so open and honest. And I'm skipping through a lot of the details because I could go on for a long time. But long story short, and I don't want to really ruin the ending. And the ending is extremely dramatic in a very visceral and dangerous way. But just before the dramatic ending, I finally get the nerve to ask her what she thought of me and what she thought of that night. Was it just like one more night for her? Was I just one more guy that she'd interacted with? And she's like, "What, are you kidding me? You're like my best friend." And I was like, whoa. We've only met once before, 4 months ago. I haven't even talked to you since then. She's like, "Yeah, but you were nicer to me than anyone else in this town."
Aww.
And at the moment, that assuaged whatever feelings I'd had of somehow being an enabler to, buying her drugs, that first night that we met, that we shared. And it, for me, conveyed that we really had made some kind of connection, however strange that would be. And then, and again, I don't want to ruin the ending. I really want people to see it, but something very dramatic and something very scary happens where there are forces outside during this entire film where there are people who are drug dealers, who are violent. One guy who'd been convicted of murder. I suddenly was within their realm. And it was the ending became frankly terrifying. Someone almost died, and luckily no one did. But it really shook me to my core. So that is what Total Novice is all about.
And I'm excited to see it just listening to that description. Right, folks? I'm like, oh, my God, that's so exciting. And it does, the whole premise of it. And I've always been moved and touched. I say this to people all the time because I judge film. And, of course, my festival's coming, so you need to hurry the hell up so you can submit. Okay, maybe you won't be ready in time. But still, I tell this to people all the time. Some of the best films that I have ever judged have been those that, later on I find out are from personal experience or from a friend of a friend or whatever have you. So totally, I'm totally down and excited, and I cannot wait to see this. Now, I have about 2 questions left for you because my clock on my wall tells me, right, this time went so damn fast. Literally.
Yeah,
either I'm really good at this or you're really good at storytelling. I think it's the latter. You're really good at storytelling.
Thanks.
What can I say? Now, there's 2 different things here that I want to bring up. I don't want to forget to mention. First of all, I just want to confirm with you, it looks like you're headed to the Sedona Yoga Festival this month. Is that not correct?
I am, yes, and I'm actually I'm telling some new stories there. I'm also teaching a storytelling class, and I also teach crowdfunding for people. But the story that I'm telling, it's currently titled, I think, All Yogis Be Crazy. But I'm kind of actually telling some sections from Fuck Tinder. So if there's anyone in the Sedona area, come up from Phoenix, it'll be a really great evening.
Now, this is taking place, and forgive me, I like a fool, I did not look up the dates. Do you know when you're going to be there specifically so if folks are out and about, they can come and see you?
Yes, the show is, what is today? Today is the 4th. The show, I believe, is the 11th of March. Next weekend. Oh, my gosh. That's a week from now.
That's kind of what I thought. That's why I wanted to profile that.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, we want to make sure that we mention that. Total Novice is not coming out of the website.
Yeah, go to the Sedona Yoga Festival website for details and look up David Rowdin or All Yogis Be Crazy.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. And we don't have a date on Total Novice yet. We don't have a date, so we're waiting to hear back on Never Meet Your Idols. That's not done as of yet. We're going to do that 20-year thing with the Hyper Opera. We've already covered that one.
Yep.
We already know about the Raw Impressions thing. And lastly, folks, before I read off this whole spiel of ways you can find this lovely young man, let me just say this. On top of what I will say in my closing comments, of course, which is forthcoming, One of the other cool things that I really like about him, only is he a writer just like I am. Not only has he written and story told many things like I have, not only is he also helpful in the nonprofit circuit like I am, but more importantly, we both play tennis. We both have a huge love for New York City. We both love the Philadelphia story. James Taylor, Billy Joel, Queen. I'm not Jewish. I can't really say that we're the same because you're Jewish and I'm not, but I'd like to be Jewish right now because let me just share this with you. Oh my God, I've been a Catholic my whole life. Now I'm not like a staunch Catholic, but I'm like, you know what, I'm spiritual. So, you know, like it's Lent for us now, you know, Ash Wednesday just started. So, you know, it's customary that we give up something, and heaven forbid I give up, well, sex. But so I was like, okay, well, we don't want to give up anything, you know, but I'm like, I really should make a sacrifice, right? So I gave up chocolate because for me, that's a big thing. It's like giving up wine for me, and I'm not giving up wine either. So I'm like, okay, this is still a big sacrifice. So the day after Ash Wednesday, I went out to the buffet at the casino. Oh, my God, I had a chocolate peanut butter bar, half of it, and I thought God was going to come down from heaven. I was at this table in the middle of the casino literally beating myself like, oh, my God. I literally said, God is going to send me to hell because I just had half a chocolate bar. Talk about cat. See, this is what I'm talking about. It's like we're just from birth. It's like the guilt is there, and I'm like, oh, my God. And I was with, you know, Richard, and he's like, you know what, don't get upset. God's not going to send you to hell over a piece of chocolate. And I'm like, but you don't get it. I'm like, I'm the worst Catholic. You know what I mean? Because you feel awful because you're like, you're supposed to sacrifice. And I screwed up in 24 hours. There's a book right there, folks. Just so you know, if anybody wants to write about how evil I am. I have about 100 stories like that. But last off, I want to ask you real quickly, did you go to Jerry Seinfeld's? No, that's tonight, isn't it? Because you said you were going to go see Jerry Seinfeld. So I was curious to ask, are you going to go see him? Because that'd be boss.
Oh, you know, I was curious about it. I never got tickets. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to go. So I will not be seeing Jerry Seinfeld tonight.
Damn it, man.
Oh, well.
So we thought we'd have that. Okay, so a couple different business things before we wrap everything up. First of all, I want to remind everybody, including you, that 2 hours after the show is finished, it's archived. So anybody can go back and listen to it any given time if they want to. So that'll be out there and about there as far as that goes. Second of all, I wanted to mention to you, because I know that you come back and forth between LA and New York City. So what I wanted to do, in case I didn't do it via email, I wanted to ask you if there's any likelihood that you'd be in New York City around the time of my festival, because even though you don't have a film to do, you meet the criteria of one of my 6, I think there's 7 industry panels, and I would love it if you consider being a panelist for the festival.
That's so cool. What are the dates of the festival? What are the dates?
June 23rd to June 25th at the Producers Club in New York. And so it's 3 days, 6 different panels, or 7, I think, with the social media one.
Well, I'm not sure yet, but let's talk offline and figure it out.
Definitely. Let's talk more, and we can get it figured out as far as that goes, because I love your background and your experience, and oftentimes what I see, the people, the last 3 festivals I was at, it's a younger crowd, obviously, and it's individuals who are really ripe and wanting to have more information from seasoned veteran individuals like yourself who have a lot to pass on. So I think it'd be great, but no pressure, certainly. If you're not going to be around, that's fine. I just thought, well, let's throw it out there and see if you're interested. So I'm going to read off a bunch of places where, definitely. These are the places that you can find David. First of all, he has a Facebook personal page, and David's last name is spelled Rodwin. It's Rodwin. See, I got it right. The website is actually jadelake.com. He is on YouTube. He is on Twitter at David, and again, it's Rodwin. Instagram, same name, obviously, David Rowdin, And again, we want to remind everybody, vloopsolutions.com. That would be his brother Scott's product in HSN, which is the Loop. And look for him 329 at the Matrix you were mentioning. Have I missed anything, or any place where people can find you?
That is it. Thank you so much.
Oh, no. Before we wrap up, I forgot. Before I give my final thoughts, because that's the last thing we do on the show, is I get to tell you what I think of you. Yeah, good luck with that one. No Michael Madsen, any Matt Kiefer. You're screwed. But before I get to that, I don't want to forget to ask this question. Actually, 2 things really quickly. I want to throw this out here. This is very important because actually while you were talking, I was alerted to something. So to my listening audience, to anyone who is listening or who can hear this, and I'll post this when I get off the show, any mutual friend of Ambrogina Liccini, he is a dear friend of mine and a bunch of mutual friends in New York City who's been battling pancreatic cancer. And while I was on this show, I was sent a note that leads me to believe that he's died. So I need anyone to let me know if that's indeed the case or not, because I will do whatever I need to do to get to New York to get to that funeral next week. So anybody at all who can either verify one way or the other, this is kind of unclear. Ambrogino, and then it's Laconi is his last name, and I know there's like 90 friends of mine that might know this. So do please, anybody just let me know, yes or no, what's going on. I'd appreciate it. As far as that goes. Now, the last thing I want to touch real quickly, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. The one neat thing I want you to talk about, because you've been another place I've never gotten to, jealous. He went to Cannes Film Festival to be exact. And the comment that I remember you saying was, and get this, folks, no one really seems to be going to the movies. And the reason I'm bringing this up now is because obviously my festival's coming up. And one of the big things that I have a hard on for, without being crude necessarily, is no one seems to want to look at cinema and art. They want to have their picture on a red carpet. They want to be next to a celebrity, etc. So would it be a fair estimate, say, based obviously on your, Cannes a big one up there, are we losing our affinity for art, and it's all becoming about paparazzi, social media, and celebrity status, etc.?
From what I've heard, Cannes has been like this for a long time. I met people who've been coming to Cannes for 20 years, and they have never seen a film. They go for the extraordinary parties. They go to be seen. It is nothing like most American film festivals. You go to Sundance, everyone's bundled up in a huge winter coat, and they're shuffling along in the slush and the snow just to get to as many films as they possibly can. I mean, there are parties at Sundance. The parties can be fun, but people don't go there to be seen. And the people who are there are, generally speaking, all filmmakers. When I was at Cannes, I was shocked. It was such a struggle to actually find any filmmakers. At best, you could find film lovers, but mostly what I was running into were people who were there for the parties.
And I guess I just find that so disheartening, and forgive me for that. Like I said, it's just probably because I was this little schoolgirl back in the day, and all I ever wanted to do was get on that red carpet one day, and now all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, it's not so glamorous. You know what I mean? I mean, it's still glamorous, but just, it's kind of like you want people to go there, and you want them to be interested in what's being made. I mean, filmmakers, directors, people spend tons of time and money, et cetera, to do a passion project. Only for people to show up, put a nice dress on, and stand on a carpet that's about 3 inches wide and 4 inches across, or whatever it is. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Do.
So it frustrates the hell out of me. Okay, so there you go. Well, thanks for validating that.
Yeah.
Wow, you're a great guest.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
You've given me everything I've wanted all in one afternoon. Okay.
Everything except for Madsen's phone number. I'll work on it.
Madsen, Kiefer Sutherland, Cannes. Oh, yeah. All right, folks, so this is a part of the evening where I get to tell David what I think of him. And the reason that I do this, and I always close out my show with this, is more so because of the fact that, first of all, everything else is scripted. This is unscripted for a reason. That means it's honest and it's blunt. It's everything that I've observed or I believe to be true about you or what I've learned from researching you. So hopefully I'm on the mark. Some people... I've had some people go silent, some people cry. That weirds me out when they cry. I'm like, don't cry. Don't cry in the show because that's weird. So here's what I have to say to you, David. First of all, I was very, very impressed because it's not very often times that someone that comes on my show is someone that approaches me. Normally 9 times out of 10 it is I approaching them. So David sent me this very lovely email talking about his film that was coming up, and I thought to myself, now that's random because it's not very often that someone approaches me. So first of all, I'm like, he gets points because I feel special. So right off the bat, I'm like, okay. Then I went to go look at him and I'm like, dude's kind of nice looking. Bonus number 2. So anybody who's good looking comes on the show. Filmmaker is almost guaranteed for that. And then I really started doing the hard work, which is finding out and learning about him. And this is what I have found out about him. He doesn't carry a passion just for lobbying or just for filmmaking or just for storytelling. He carries a passion and a propensity for life. That to me is one of the first things that dragged me all the way over here and said, you know what, you need to do an interview with this man. Anyone who carries that amount of excitement and zeal and just zen almost is the word that comes to mind when it comes to every facet of his life is amazing. I noticed in all of the pictures and all the different projects that you do, I can always tell that your heart is 150% in it because you get this, and you can go back and look at your pictures because I've looked at it. He has this sparkle about him when he's around certain people, certain places, or certain projects, and you can tell that it means something to him because his face changes. And how do I know that? Because I'm the exact same way. Because when I'm around certain people or when I'm on my show or when I'm doing a film, it's very, very exciting. I love the fact that you were so real and raw and blunt about how you feel, what your plan is, and the fact that you don't idolize or glamorize the industry that you're in or the fact that you make yourself more than you are. You are perfect just as you are. I think you are flawed in the best possible way. I think you're funny. I think you're engaging. I love your stories. I love your sense of wit and wonder, and I think you're very intriguing. Now, do I get to San Francisco? Probably never. Am I going to now? Well, now that you don't have maps and number. Just kidding. That's just a running joke. I find you to be absolutely divine and delightful. I would be any one of your projects. I would gladly encourage anyone else to see some of your projects, if nothing else, because you will bring them a smile and a sense of glee and a sense of the world is not so god-awful, or let's make a joke out of it if it is, which I think is even more fabulous. I feel very honored that you came on my show and you approached me because of all the other places you could be today, you spent all this time with me. So I'm very privileged and very honored, and I will certainly come and see your films. I will certainly keep pestering you until you come to one of my festivals or something that I'm involved in because I want to be around you. I want to actually see if you smell good. I want to actually see if you're this funny in person. And I think you're just kick-ass, man. You're just awesome, period. Minus the phone number, minus the Kiefer Sutherland. You're just awesome. And I think you're great. I just thank you. Thank you for all this time with you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This is an absolutely delightful way to spend my afternoon. I can't wait to finally meet you in person.
That would be awesome. I would absolutely love that, definitely. So like I said, give it a couple hours. It'll definitely be archived as far as that goes. And stay in touch with me. Let me know the progress of the different books and the progress of the other stuff so you can not only come back to the show, but more importantly, we can coordinate New York if possible because I think that's awesome because you go there enough and I go there enough. Then we could probably meet there even if you don't get to the festival because I'm definitely going to be back there at least a couple times for the festival.
Excellent. And really, this is you're a wonderful host and interviewer. I cannot wait to do more with you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I really, really do. Definitely, without a doubt. Now, you must get the hell off my phone. I got to go get drunk. Did I just say that? No, I have to go take a shower, and then I have to go out. All that good stuff. No, see, I can even drink wine and do my job. Kudos. No, I am going to go out with a very old and dear friend. And this has really been the best afternoon. I'm like, if I have to work and do this, see, this is why I love what I do. I loved this. It like went like that, didn't it? It just went so fast. Really.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
Well, definitely. It's like an online date, only there's no connection. I mean, there is a connection, but there's been, well, never mind. See, I would make a horrid storyteller. You'll have to help me out to be a storyteller, and then we'll. Okay, before I get any farther into this, let's just let this man go. I'll wrap up the show. Thank you, my dear. I'll be in touch very soon, and we'll coordinate dates, without a doubt.
What a pleasure. Thanks so much.
All right, dear. Have a great afternoon. Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Was he not awesome or what? Let's hope that I was as awesome as he was, right? And I don't know where the hell that last part came from. Actually, what I really meant to say was, gosh, that would have been an awesome date if he would have been sitting here with me. I'm not going to lie, folks. Like I said, he's a little cutie. And I mean that in all senses of the word. Very smart, very intuitive, and extremely, extremely fine-tuned when it comes to the fine arts. Definitely follow his projects. One more time, I want to remind everybody, the name again is David Rowdin. He can be found on Facebook, personal page. The website again is Jade, Jade, Lake.com. The Twitter handle is @David Rowdin. Same thing with Instagram, David Rowdin. And then, of course, he is also on YouTube as well. And again, one more time, 3/29, he'll be at the Matrix next weekend at the Sedona Yoga Film Festival. Sedona Yoga Festival, and then, of course, V-Loop Solutions. His brother Scott, as he had talked about earlier in the show, had produced a product on HSN called The Loop. So definitely go ahead and check all of them out. Once again, my big, big thanks to David. Thank you for keeping me occupied all afternoon so I can go out and have a good time. Thanks so much, as always, to my listening audience. If you guys didn't tune in, if you didn't listen in, if you didn't care, I wouldn't have a show. So obviously I have to say thank you so much for listening in and taking time out of your weekend. Want to remind everybody I'll be back on the air at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time on this coming Monday, February 6th. Yeah, this is how you know I've been talking too long. March 6th, 11 a.m., Linda Jacobson is going to be coming on the show. She is both the founder of thedailymigraine.com as well as what they call the Migraine Hat. Hugely excited to talk to her because, first of all, we all know I've been having migraine headaches, but more importantly, she has suffered over 9,000 migraine headaches over the course of 26-plus years. So we want to find out the tricks, the remedies, the ways in which we can find out how to take care of our migraines, as well as finding out what sort of factors affect them, etc. Then Tuesday the 7th, Jim Germanock is going to be on the show. He is an author. And then the 8th, it looks like we're juggling. We have a mystery guest coming, who I think is going to be an actress promoting a film, but don't quote me. Check the schedules in chat corner or my personal page. Again, thanks so much to all. Have a wonderful weekend. Take care now.